In this video, I'm going to show you a very nice endgame study. It's white to play and win. I'm going to challenge you to try to find the solution yourself. And don't worry, if it's too difficult to find yourself, just enjoy what I'm going to show you in the next couple of minutes. Because I think it's very instructive in general to try to solve endgame studies. It will help you to understand endgames better, to calculate better, but also to better understand the relation between your pieces, how they can benefit from each other, how they can support each other. And this example very nicely shows the power of a rook and a bishop, because when we look at the position, we do see that white is behind in material. It's black having an extra queen, and we also see that white's king is even at the side of the board. So if you just would play a very calm move, then it's black who is going to place the queen on g4. So black is threatening to give checkmate himself. Well, that's the first thing we have to understand. There are other things we need to understand from this position, but it also teaches us we need to look at forcing moves. We are going to look at checks first, because if you don't play a check, let's say you play here this move d4, then it's the move queen g4 with checkmate. So we are looking for a check. And what are the possible checks? Well, if you do advance your pawn to e4, then you're attacking the king, but the king will probably even come to f4 when the threat is still there. And this doesn't really help you at all. We take it back and we need to find other possibility here for white. And the key move here is to play this check, rook f2. That makes a lot of sense, because now you're asking black, what are you going to do with your king? There are only two available squares. Either the king goes to e5 or the king can go to g6. Well, let's say if the king goes to g6, then all of a sudden we see that the black king and queen, they are together standing on the same open file. And that means that with the move rook g2 check, we can just pick up the queen on the next move. The king has to move again, and then you can just take on g8. And after black recaptures, you still have enough pawns to win the game. Your bishop up with 3 pawns. If it's just bishop without pawns on the board, then it's a theoretical draw. But since the pawns are there, this is going to be a relatively an easy win. Now we take it back. In the position after the move rook f2 check, the king can also go back to the center. But here we feel that the king, even though it's placed in the center, it's being surrounded by its own pawns and the white pawns. On one hand, it may look safe, standing well placed against any check, but it can also mean that if white is just giving one check, it could be just almost instantly mate. Now, what are the candidate moves? Well, we are looking at checks, and by far the most logical check in this position here is to play the move d4. So what we see here is that the pawn is giving a check, and it also opens up the diagonal for the bishop on b1. So the bishop now nicely covers this diagonal, but the problem is that the king has still one square to go to. It can go to d5, and the problem is that you're not able to make a checkmate within 1 or 2 moves. For instance, if you do give a check with your bishop now, then you see that the king still has 2 squares to go to. It can go to c6, or it can even go to e4. And it seems to me that black is just escaping. The same happens basically if you do push your pawn instead, because then the pawn on d4 will be hanging. So that shows that the move d4 is not good. But this is also a problem for a lot of players. They see the move d4 doesn't work and they go back to the starting position. But in such positions, you should look at all the available checks. Even the crazy looking moves, they can help you to win the game. Now, let's have a look. What are other possibilities? Well, not that many checks available, but there's this move. Look, guys, there is the move rook f5 check. I hope you have seen this in advance. That would be just awesome. What is black going to play here? Well, if you do take with a king, now the pawn goes to d4 with check. This is the brilliant idea of white. By advancing the pawn, you're giving a check with the bishop, and the king cannot go anywhere. All the squares have been taken away. The bishop covers the g6 square, the pawn and king, they're even covering the other squares on the g file. So this is just a beautiful checkmate with the help of a discovered check. Let's go back just to the starting position. I want to point out something to you. Before you actually look at finding the right move, it's very important to think about ideas. And in the starting position, we have actually already seen that the rook, bishop, and pawn, they are standing on the same diagonal. So if you could just move the rook and the pawn away, then it means the bishop is able to give a check. So it's very important to see through the pieces. Let's see how they can actually target opponent's pieces. So in one line, it's about trying to find the checkmate. In other lines, it's about trying to find a way to win the queen. So let's try to check this line again. So after rook f2, we have seen that king g6 is not good because of rook g2 and you win the queen. If you play the move king e5, then this brilliant move rook f5 is very important and it does win the game. The king cannot take the rook because of d4 with checkmate. But you can also take with the pawn. Now, we don't have that many options. We should give a check. And the good news is that giving check with a pawn forces the king to go to an inferior square. The king cannot come forward. The pawn covers the f4 square. The bishop covers the e4 square and the pawn on c5 covers the d6 square. So the only two squares available are d5 and e6. Now if you do put the king on d5, we follow it up with this move. Bishop a2 with check. And the nice thing is that wherever the king goes, if it's either c6 or e4, you just have the possibility to take the queen on g8 and white is winning the game. That's very nice. Let's go back, because what is the difference if the king just goes back to e6? That's very important. You cannot think that's just exactly the same. Always try to challenge yourself to see the differences between two moves. After the move bishop e6, after the move king e6, there is bishop a2. That's very important. So you do have the check again, but now black can block with the d pawn. It's d5, and it looks as if black is just surviving here. Oh no, wait a second. There is this stupid en passant rule. It's pawn takes d6. When you just capture the pawn on d5 is gone, and the bishop is giving check again. If you do take back with the king, then it's bishop takes g8, and your bishop up and the two remaining pawns will be eliminated very soon. White is winning the game, and therefore I think this is a very instructive endgame puzzle. I hope you liked it. I hope you find it useful as well. Let me know in the comments what you think of this game and if you would like to see more endgame studies. I think they are very helpful to develop as a player. I've solved them in my own youth as well. Now I'm presenting them to my students and here on the YouTube channel. So if you like them, you're one click away from subscribing to my channel. Thanks for doing that, and then soon you will see more of these. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.